Let's go! LSU gets another commitment from Jeremiah Hughes, a three-star corner out of Bishop Gorman High School. Now, what's really fascinating about today's video is that it's not really going to be about the young man that just committed, right? Because, look, he does look very physical in the running game, but what's really fascinating is, of course, LSU just got another cornerback commitment from Ashton Stamps, who could potentially play safety. This is the second three-star defensive back that LSU has picked up in the past week, and the fifth overall defensive back that LSU has committed in this class, with Michael Doherty, Ryan Yates, Dalen Austin, Ashton Stamps, and now Hughes. But what this video is going to be about is the new view recruiting of Brian Kelly. Is he truly trying to build a national outreach when it comes to recruiting? Because I've gotten so many messages from you guys about, hey, we have a ton of great defensive backs in the state of Louisiana, and we should recruit more Louisiana guys. So let's just chat about this commitment here from what looks to be a very talented player. The state of Las Vegas isn't a recruiting powerhouse per se when it comes to high school football. And the second thing is Bishop Gorman is probably the most loaded team in all of the country, especially if you factor in where they are relative to the talent that they actually play. Now, what does that mean? Well, there are plenty of programs out there, such as IMG Academy. LSU just got a commitment from Deshaun Womack from St. Francis, which is a really good high school football powerhouse. But Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas has so much more talent than every other high school program in Las Vegas. So what that tells me is a big part of why Hughes is such a coveted prospect isn't who he plays in games every day, it's who he practices against. Zachariah Branch is considered by many the best wide receiver in 2023. He is at Bishop Gorman. There's also two other defensive backs that are currently rated in the top 500 prospects, one of which is a top 100 player that's currently committed to Georgia. So the truth is, Bishop Gorman practices are oftentimes more competitive than the actual games that they play. I know that sounds strange, but it's quite literally the truth. And the second thing about Bishop Gorman is every year, if you just go look at the absolute top players in the state of Las Vegas, almost half of the top 15 every single season is Bishop Gorman players. So they are loaded. Now, they've had some players that have busted spectacularly, like a Tate Martell, and they've also, that's where Snoop Dogg's son, Cornell Brodus, played his high school football. But for the most part, if you look recently at Bishop Gorman's success, they have had a lot, and I mean a lot of it. Now, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, that's where he played his high school football. A lot of you remember him, the quarterback from UCLA. But what's really fascinating is Bishop Gorman that same year had not one, but two three-star wide receivers play at an extremely high level. Jalen Naylor, who went to Michigan State, and Cedric Tillman, who is a really, really good wide receiver at Tennessee in Heupel's high-powered system with Hendon Hooker. So we actually will see Tillman this year coming to Baton Rouge a little bit later in the year. So Bishop Gorman, it is ridiculous how many great high school football players have come in particularly recent years, where a lot of them have turned out to be really good football players. There's a corner who went to Stanford who's a really solid player in his early years. So once again, it sounds strange, but Bishop Gorman rarely plays competitive high school football games. The talent that they play against is very questionable, but there is no doubt about it that if you go to a Bishop Gorman practice, there is going to be future NFL players at every single one of those practices. It's year in, year out. They put out really good high school football prospects. Some of them don't work out, some of them do, but that's part of it. Now, once again, this has been a little bit more general. The book is still out for me on Jeremiah Hughes because, once again, there's not a whole lot of corner tape on here, but a lot of it does look impressive. The one thing that I will say is that This guy is really, really, really physical. And you do see a lot of these press corner clips where he's right there on the corner or the wide receiver, as you see here. That's very impressive right there, getting really physical with the jam and then coming up and making this tackle. So, yeah, I like it a lot. I like that Robert Steeples has this defensive back room loaded along with Kerry Cooks and the rest of the defense. So, yeah, I am interested to see if LSU picks up any of these top-end Louisiana defensive backs. I know Derek Williams is already gone. And gone to Texas. I don't think that's over with just yet. But there's obviously a long list of really good 4-star or better defensive backs that currently aren't committed to LSU, like a Jordan Matthews, who a lot of you like out of Woodlawn. So, yeah, it's very fascinating. Curly Reed, the list goes on of high school Louisiana defensive backs that are still there. I don't know if they would be willing to come to a defensive back room that already has 5 commitments, and let's be honest, they had a decent haul last year with Terrence Welch, Jordan Allen, and whatnot. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see if any of those players still consider LSU. The Marjavius Moss guy is someone that I'm very interested in out of Shreveport, who hasn't really gotten much LSU steam lately, but we shall see what happens. But overall, I'm really excited about this. And if you look, once again, those 3-star receivers, Bishop Gorman's put out some really good ones. Maybe the other side of the ball is the better side of the ball for Jeremiah Hughes. His ball skills are really, really good. And, there are some other huddle clips. It looks like they were going up against a JV team maybe, but, once again, it could be just that Las Vegas competition. Now, I do want to include one thing that I found to be very, very fascinating is Jeremiah Hughes. The one real viral thing that's actually come from his recruitment is actually a tweet from his mother, Nikki, and you're looking at it right now regarding some very positive praise not only for LSU and Arkansas about how clean the recruitment has been. Not a lot of negative recruiting amongst those two programs, and that really stood out to her. Now, once again, each recruit's own journey and recruitment is interesting. Maybe both of those programs, don't need to negatively recruit one another. But yeah, that's, to me a good thing, right? I'm not a big fan of negative recruiting, but I know it's part of the business. I just wanted to include that because a tweet has made its rounds. Boom! I'm looking at you. Yes, you, okay? So, Dante Moore will make his announcement within the 24 hours of me posting this video. So, this is going to sound like very dated. I don't think LSU is going to land him, but it is worthy of a discussion, right? On tonight's live stream, we're going to talk about a very interesting statistic about why, if Dante Moore picked Oregon, it would actually not be a good decision whatsoever. But first thing, it's not just Dante Moore. Cole Dellinger is also making an announcement in the next 24 to 48 hours, the younger brother of Garrett Dellinger. I don't think he's going to pick LSU either. But once again, with this recruiting thing, I get this comment all the time, right? This player is a lock to go here. This player, there's no way they're going to LSU or Notre Dame or insert any school that you want to. And I get that comment a lot. I'm going to get it under this video as well. I get it under probably every video. One thing to keep in mind with recruiting, the more you think you know, you don't really know, if that makes sense. In other words, there's more that you don't know than you do know, right? Especially now with name, image, and likeness being a part of the equation. And the same thing also applies to what has been the number one comment I've gotten not only just here, but in messages in our new Patreon Discord, right? Make sure you check it out. Jackson Hour Post is free. We want you to join our private chat room. It's a lot of fun. I guarantee it. But I get this question about Louisiana recruiting, right? This is a bizarre start to the class because it is such a national framework right now. But calm down. Remember, I say this in almost every recruiting video. Breathe in, breathe out, okay? Let me ask you a question. Do you think it's harder to convince an out-of-state kid to come to LSU than an in-state kid? It is. It is way harder to do that. So if you do have other players that are high on your board that's outside the state of Louisiana, you have to recruit them harder. You just do. And that's part of it. Another part of it as well is maybe LSU, and maybe this, what I'm about to say, has nothing to do with their recruitment, but if you look, they just got, this is essentially their entire secondary, is former Louisiana guys that went to other schools but eventually came back to LSU anyway. Maybe LSU feels that way about just recruiting in general, that with the transfer portal, they can eventually bring in some 3 and lower ranked 4 stars that went to other schools back to LSU. Look, let's just say for some reason Major Burns beat out Jay Ward for safety. That means you could have a entire secondary comprised of players that went to another school from Louisiana that still came back to LSU. It is truly incredible how many of those guys are currently on LSU's team. So maybe that's playing a factor into some of LSU's recruiting. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. But it is a very interesting concept of how much recruiting has changed just in these past couple of seasons. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Once again, and that's fine. You can send me a message about anything you want, but we'll talk about that more on tonight's live stream. I don't care. You could send me, once again, you could send me a message about anything, but the truth is I wouldn't panic too much about the lack of Louisiana guys that are currently committed. So far, only one of the 18 Louisiana 4-stars is currently committed to LSU. 4-star or better players. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. We'll see you in the private Discord, okay? It is Power Hour LSU. Bam! And tonight, ESPN tomorrow morning. We'll see what happens with Dante Moore. Tonight, we will be doing... I think Hayes going to a potluck and bringing back some goodies. Let's go.